After the review process, we're now ready for the final export. Consistent naming and file organization are key here, especially when managing multiple projects. I'll show you the settings we use, the naming convention that keeps files organized, and the export process to ensure the final cut is exactly what the client ordered. This also involves how we export and name for videos in our internal review process we discussed in the last section.
In the last video, we talked about exporting review process internally, right? So we definitely exported the video. There was an internal review, but now we're going to talk about exporting and naming conventions. So we're kind of going backwards, but also this is the export for the client, not for internal review, but the same principles apply. So we're going to export the video in the aspect ratio and quality specified in the brief or by the client requirements. So whatever the client's using it for, Instagram, YouTube, they're all going to have different aspect ratios. So we want to make sure we're obviously exporting in the right format. For this video, we're going to show, I'm going to use this as an example. This is obviously in 16:9, and so we should export it in 16:9. So we're going to export media, and let me move this. So we're going to save it in our systems, which, like I said, we'll go into in the next course. But we have our A projects, but then we have our clients. And inside of clients, it's very similar to A projects. We have the client name, and inside there we have the Q1, Q2s. And these projects actually match similar to A projects. The reason they're separate is it can once again get super messy. So this is where all the final videos live, and this is where the projects that are running live. So when we're exporting, we're putting the final videos here and all the versions. So there's thousands of videos in Honeyloves. So it's very important that we do this. And then when we finish out a year, we move that folder into the next year. And so for the example of this, we are going to treat it similar to where we have this A project, Tyson Media. So we're going to go to our clients. We're going to have a Tyson Media. We're going to create, and then we're going to name it the same way that the project is named. So it's Tyson Media, which is the company name or the product name, depending on the size of the client. And then we have the project name, and this is a test project. And that's going to be the name of the file, but we also want to make sure we have that inside of a folder. So folders are going to be the same thing, Tyson Media _ test project. Great. So I jumped ahead on the naming of the file. We'll first do that, and now we get into this. So we've got our name, but we also need to make sure we add in the aspect ratio into the name. We need to add in the version into the name and the cut into the name. And the reason is that when you are doing videos for clients, there's typically, you're giving them a 1x1, a 9x16, a 16:9, a 4x5, like there's all these. So you want to keep those separated. So we're going to call this one 16:9. And then after that, we're going to add the version. So the version is, like I showed you in the brief for Honeylove, there's 2 versions of that one video, meaning there's 2 ads, 2 hooks to the one ad. So there's 2 versions. So this is going to be V1. And then this C1 is cut. So cut 1 is basically for our internal review. So when I export this for the first time, which was in the last video, I'm exporting it here as a C1. So then I'm going to export it, and I'm going to click save. And when it exports, I'm going to upload that for the internal review, and I'm going to share that. And then when it comes back, like if I get feedback, then I'm going to come back into the project, and I'm going to call this C2. Because this is cut to. So this allows us internally to know how many times the video has been exported, and then also knows if we need to go back to a certain cut or not. But the version number doesn't change. So this is for the client. This is for us internally. And this has worked well. There's other things that you might end up adding to the name, like captions. So sometimes you'll send a video to the client with captions, or sometimes you'll send it with, and at the same time, you'll send it with no captions. So you'll want to differentiate those 2 files as well. So yeah, it's just about what the client needs, and make sure that you're naming it and putting it in this system to keep things organized. Let me touch real quick too on the export. So we've done the name. I just canceled that, but we're going to add it to the location. I just explained those two things. So exporting is, I mean, there's a million different ways you can export, but when your video or sequence is in a 4K sequence, you want to export in a 4K sequence. And I like to use H.264. This is pretty standard across the board. And then I like Vimeo 2160p 4K Ultra HD. And when you click more, I'll click render at maximum depth, use maximum render quality. What that does, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it makes the video better. The standard target bitrate is 20 typically, but when you go to Vimeo, this preset, then it'll bump it up to 48, and it just makes the file bigger, makes it higher quality. You can obviously drop that back down to 20. You don't need to do a 2-pass, just do the 1 pass. And that's pretty much straightforward. If we're going to do a 9:16, like a real size, we're going to match source. So when I click that, it's going to automatically choose the settings that I'm editing in. So it'll give me that 9:16 frame, or 1:1 or 4:5. And then I'll check the same boxes. Like I said, this is probably going to end up going to 20 when you're doing like an Instagram reel. The quality doesn't have to quite be as high. The file size can be smaller, so we'll drop that. But that is pretty much the export and naming convention list.